When I was appointed to the House of Delegates, I became the youngest woman in the nation to serve at the state level. And part of that process, because it was an appointment process, I put my name in for the appointment. And again, I never thought that I was going to get it, but I wanted people to know that I was interested in the position so that someday I wouldn't be the new kid on the block, so to speak. And lo and behold, the governor ended up selecting me and appointing me to the position, and I've been elected back to the seat twice since then. I felt like I was at risk of becoming a career politician because I have been in the House for 10 years now, and that is really what prompted me to sort of sit back and evaluate my position and what I wanted to do for the future. I've been in the House leadership. I've gotten as high as I can in the ranks in terms of House leadership, so I'm not one to sit still for very long, so I really was thinking about what would be next and how I could most affect change in the state of Maryland. Well, David did call me directly and he asked if we could have lunch in Annapolis, and we met downtown and had lunch, and my initial thought was that he was going to ask me for an endorsement for his run for governor, which I was prepared to say yes, because I really do think that David is the most qualified candidate for the job. I think that he's a really great person, and I think that he'll be an excellent leader for our state. So I was a little bit taken aback when the question came of, would you consider being my lieutenant governor candidate? And it was really an honor and a very exciting opportunity for a young Eastern Shore girl. Well, I have joked a few times in some of my remarks that I have definitely contributed my share of the gas tax over the last few months. But honestly, it's been great getting across the state and meeting new people. And David and I are both really the old-fashioned campaigners. We love to get out and shake hands and look people in the eye and hear what's on their minds. And we think social media is important too. It's a important part of any campaign, but there's just nothing like meeting people face to face and really listening to what their concerns are. I think there are some common threads across the state. Everyone is really concerned about the economy. Everyone is really concerned about the business climate and how Maryland is perceived in terms of its business friendliness, jobs, taxes. Those are all, heavily weighing on people's minds as, the economy has recovered. Many areas of Maryland have not recovered as quickly, especially rural Maryland. And again, to go to common themes, whenever we're in rural Maryland, there are a large number of residents that feel like they have either been ignored or forgotten by the establishment in Annapolis. So that's another common area of concern that David and I operate. What's really interesting is that both of us have legislative experience. So we both have pretty strong opinions about policy in the state, and we both have actively worked on different areas of policy in the state. So again, we're sort of old-fashioned. We actually sit down with one another and discuss the issues. We also use people throughout the state that are resources in those areas or that have expertise in those areas to make sure that we have the most current and relevant information. And it's sort of a visioning exercise. Common Core is an excellent example. David was a public educator for over 30 years. So granted, he has some very strong opinions about how education should take shape in our state.
Yeah. And you have the same concern.
Correct, yeah, absolutely. And we feel that there should be as much local control as possible in the issue of Common Core specifically.
Yeah.
We have local school boards for a reason, and we think it's more important to let government get out of the way and let teachers in the classroom teach and give them the resources that they need to teach. Many of the superintendents that we've talked to and many members of the teachers union that we've talked to are equally as concerned about the Common Core, and I think that the rollout of the program has really proven to be why the rollout has been extremely difficult for the school districts and for the teachers, for the administrators, for the superintendents, and ultimately for the students. I mean, we have students that are now incredibly frustrated by their experience with these tests, and we need to have an educational environment that's conducive to learning. our kids today don't need any extra stress, especially with a program that's this invasive. Well, I think day one, the very first thing that we need to do is get the house in order, meaning get the budget under control, get spending under control, and really get our state agencies back to their core functions, look at places where we can consolidate and make changes in the budget, in the spending. And then the next most important thing is going to be to attack that business climate. Taxes are certainly, right off the bat, the first thing that we can point to. Our tax structure is just not competitive with the states surrounding us. But I would also go further to say that it is the regulations, the regulatory environment in our state. It is all of the proposed policies that are coming. So what I'm trying to say is it's not any one thing, it's the combination of all of these things at a really bad time, because as I mentioned before, a lot of our businesses are still struggling and haven't recovered from the economic downturn. And specifically when you look at retailers, when you look at manufacturing, these are core job producers that have really had the biggest impact when it comes to some of these policies and taxes. So we need to get the tax structure competitive, and we need to look at the regulatory burden and reduce the regulatory burden. And we need to work with businesses directly. I mean, even the businesses that are capitalized in our state, I feel they are not expanding and not creating jobs because there's so much uncertainty in the market. They're just literally holding on to everything that they have because of that uncertainty. And I think having a strong executive at the top would really make a difference and could help alleviate some of those concerns. I do think there is a lot of redundancy. And I think that that's an important point when you're trying to balance a budget and you're trying to reduce a budget, that state agencies really stick to their core mission and really prioritize. We need to triage programs that work, and we need to get rid of the programs that don't work. And it's a really common sense approach, but it would make a huge difference in terms of the way our budget is developed in the state. I mean, I love to use the aquaculture example. You know, we all want to encourage aquaculture. It represents a tremendous opportunity for our state, but if you're gonna start an aquaculture business, you have to deal with the Department of Natural Resources, the Department of Business and Economic Development, the State Department of Assessment and Taxation, the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, the Department of Agriculture. Those are 5 agencies just off the top of my head before you can even start an aquaculture business. It's ridiculous. It just needs to be streamlined, and that's, you know, one example that I can come up with off the top of my head of why. Well, definitely we look at policies that have worked in other states, but also I would point to the fact that as county executive in Harford County, David has already done this. He has balanced their budget. He actually reduced taxes. He reduced the size of their government without eliminating positions that people were currently sitting in. And he created jobs at a time when a lot of other jurisdictions weren't able to do that. So he has the practical experience and he has the model. He can start that on day one at the state level. Well, I think you have to look at the fact that a lot of the high-level legislation that has passed, a lot of the controversial legislation that has passed in the last 6 to 7 years have primarily passed by a very slim majority. And I believe it is because of the power of our executive in Maryland. We have one of the most powerful executives in the country because of the budget process that we have and in terms of setting the legislative agenda. And so the current administration, I think, has really pushed the envelope and has really moved far left of where most Marylanders identify themselves, and they've taken their General Assembly members with them down that path. And a lot of them, I feel, would vote more pro-business or would at least feel freed up to vote more pro-business if there was a better executive and a better legislative agenda coming from the second floor. Because again, I think all of us want the same thing. We all want jobs, we all want, you know, a better tax system, and we all want a productive, successful state. And I hope to lean on my 10 years of experience with these legislators to be able to sit at the table with them and work out some of these issues. And, it's an important part of the process to remember that you can have the greatest policy idea in the world, but you still have to get it passed by the House and the Senate. So you have to be able to work with other elected officials. And I think David and I both have a track record of doing that.